everyone, happy weekend!
Yes.
And you know what the weekend means, Steph? We have a list of things that we want to do and don't want to do.
Actually, ako is don't want
Lahat.
to do anything. Well, whatever your plans are for this weekend, make sure you watch our episode today because it's all about creating beauty and enriching minds.
And let's start things off with Swing Space. Now, this is a co-working space and study cafe. Of course, you find your perfect spot to get those creative juices flowing.
Speaking of creativity, here's an artist that has just celebrated his 25 years in the industry, Rajo Laurel. I'm so
Yay.
proud to call him my friend, a really good friend at that. And I speak with him about where he has been, what's he been doing, and where he's going to go.
And to continue our streak of inspiration, usually inspiration comes when you try something new, diba? So stay tuned for this intriguing acting class being offered by Third World Improv.
It's definitely a packed episode today, from living spaces to living life beyond its confines.
This is your ultimate guide to modern living.
From haute couture to pret-a-porter, adorable children's clothes, and super chic menswear. Everything from uniforms, notebooks, and accessories. There are very few people who can use the word designer in all its senses. Today, we're featuring Rahul Aurelio and his 25 years in the industry.
It was a night to remember in celebration of philanthropy and creativity. Honored at the Red Charity Gala, Rajo Laurel marked his silver year by staging his biggest fashion show to date, the Archipelago. Through almost 100-piece collection, Rajo paid tribute to local artisans and craftsmen and created an essay of what is the modern Filipino style.
Finally, I get to carve out a little bit of time with one of my favorite people in the world, who is also my neighbor. So, hi, Rahul.
Hi, neighbor.
So, last year was a huge year for you.
Yes, it was.
25th year in the industry. Tell me a little bit more about all the stuff that came with that.
Essentially, it took a long time to celebrate it, and it culminated with this beautiful gala with all of my friends showcasing more than 90 dresses.
So, I mean, it was such a beautiful show. It was so artistic. I particularly loved the opening. That was
Yes.
so
Thank you.
beautiful, right? You used a lot of different materials for the show. Can you
Well, the
talk about
materials essentially from the shows are all primarily made in the Philippines. So what I did was to travel from different weaving communities, literally from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and try to figure out how I can modernize this. The concept of the whole thing was how we can sort of like define our people, our culture, through our weaves and through essentially what is contemporary Filipino today.
One of the country's most prolific fashion designers, Rajo Laurel has been creating bespoke pieces and beautiful collections season after season since he first created gowns for his sisters more than 2 decades ago. Today, he helps define the look of the contemporary Filipina and empowers women in his creative process.
You've been dressing women for 25 years,
Yes.
right? That's a generation,
Yes.
right? More than a generation. How do you feel like the Filipina has evolved?
By leaps and bounds. I feel that the Filipina now is not the same Filipina she was 25 years ago. I think she's definitely more confident, definitely more aware of herself, and definitely on her own. I don't think she needs a man anymore to dictate what she wants to do with her life. And I'm glad I'm able to see that dichotomy of change and the empowerment of the Filipina. And it's wonderful.
How is that translated into clothing?
My goodness, by the choices that they make. Half the time, they really don't have to please their partner. They just have to please themselves.
Which is wonderful.
Which is wonderful. And the decision-making process is not like, oh, I have to call my husband. Oh, will my boyfriend like this? No, it's basically about her, about how she wants to portray herself. And I see that, especially in the younger generation, wherein they come here. The young women of today really sort of like, this is what I want. This is what I'm wearing. Take it or leave it.
Rajo's artistry is evident in the concept of his work, but it's his quality execution that elevates his creations. Rajo has brought to life many dream garments, be it for special occasions or everyday wear.
You're like a fairy godmother, at least to me.
Well-
I come in here with all kinds of crazy ideas.
Yes, and you're a prime example of what a modern Filipina is. I mean, case in point, I mean, you're intelligent, smart, practical. Now, what I mean by that is a lot of people don't realize that we live in such tight closets.
Yes.
Gone are the days when sort of like we can fit in these humongous gowns. But one thing that your audience might learn from you is the value of separates.
Yes, that's right.
And you've always championed that because you get more mileage out of
Of
it. And
course.
so if people think more like you, then it'll be, again, a more intelligent option.
Yeah, and I think separates now have become, just being practical is
Yeah.
also very chic.
Always open for collaborations, he understands how unique or universal his clients' needs are.
Do you have a funny story of like maybe one of the most outrageous requests that you've ever gotten, or a crazy outfit that you've had to do?
Absolutely. I mean, one of my clients is Tessa Prieto Valdez. So, she comes in here twice a week just with a brief. For instance, she's celebrating her 25th anniversary and she just wrote one word, Wakanda. And she was such in a hurry because she was leaving for a trip. And she goes and she picked up a few things for her trip. And she goes, this is my 25th anniversary theme, Wakanda. And I texted her, Wakanda's in Black Panther? And she just answers, forever. So you know what I mean? So those everyday things that we find exuberant and strange is just a part and parcel of a client's life.
Yeah.
So again, you go with the flow.
If you had one dream person that you could dress, who would it be and what would you put them in?
That's a beautiful question. It's a toss-up between China Chow. She was sort of like this wonderful model muse in the late 80s. Primarily because I think she's so serene. It's just so beautiful and lithe. And if I were to make something for her, I'd probably make her a dress made out of piña with really fine embroidery, full-on embroidery, but the shape will be very simple. Another person would be Kate Winslet. She's just gorgeous.
She's lovely.
And I want to put her in a Barong Tagalog.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Nice.
Aside from his high-profile clientele, everyday consumers get to share in his art as it translates to all products under his brand, House of Laurel.
Basically, you can design for anyone and anything. I mean, I love this about Rajo so much because you can do baptismal gowns, you can dress for your Lola or for your teenage daughter going to the prom, wedding gowns, even uniforms,
Yes.
right? I mean, I think that's amazing. And even accessories like notebooks, ball pens, whatever, all of that. I mean, what draws you to design in general?
Creativity. I believe that the main thrust of any designer is really about creativity. I'm not a snob when it comes to sort of like where my creativity leads me. I think there's this openness in my heart that says if I'm given a particular challenge, I dive without any hesitation and I'll see what happens when I land on my feet. That's part of the process of being a creative person. Sometimes you don't know how to get from point A to B. You just
figure
go
it
for
out,
it. You
yeah.
figure it out in the end. I mean, in many ways, I think that for me is quite exciting. Is the figuring out the problem solving as you proceed. Because designing is all about that, problem solving.
Yes.
But if you sort of like say, oh, I'm not going to do this, then you're stuck. Then you won't be able to grow and you won't be able to learn and all of that. So when in doubt, just say yes.
Sounds like my mom. When in doubt, do.
Yes, that's a very good mantra. We should print it out on t-shirts. When in doubt, do.
Not resting on his laurels, Rajo fortifies his house by sharing his artistic expertise and business savvy.
What is your advice for young designers in the future?
Learn how to sew, learn the craft, understand.
Sewing is so
Sewing.
important, guys. Your drawing
Yeah.
doesn't matter if the
Yeah.
sewing is bad.
Execution is even more important than the idea.
Correct.
But you need to be able to translate that idea
Yeah.
to make it real and tangible. So I think even if you're not good at it, you just need to know how difficult it is to make these things so that when a problem arises, you know how to handle it, you know how to solve it. You don't sort of like scratch your head and say, how do you do this? You actually done it yourself. And also another aspect that I can share with future young designers is really learn the daily process of creation, and yet also know that it is a business in the end. So it's also important to balance your creativity with your commerce. So it's not just fantasy.
Yes.
You must be able to really put your feet firmly on the ground and realize that you have to pay rent, you have to pay your water bills, you have to pay your electricity, and all of these factors. These two factors work hand in hand in order to be a real viable and successful venture.
What's Rajo Laurel gonna be like in the next like 5-10 years?
It's about consistency. It's about creating sort of like a legacy that you can actually leave behind. It's me outliving my brand and preparing for that. So what that means is that it's not going to be, of course it's still me, but it's not just me. Developing a team, developing the language of your house, so that when I build the House of Laurel, it will move forward and it will not die just with me.
And that's a great thing about you. You do teach and you do share. You're not swapping with your knowledge.
No.
And I think that's amazing because, you know, I guess sometimes some big designers they're very closed, or they don't really want to share their knowledge, or they're very protective over their ideas, right? But I think it's wonderful that you're so open and generous with your knowledge.
Yeah, because I think that's the way I learned as well, through my mentors and through all the people that has taught me.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a passing on the baton and just paying it forward.
Apart from the beauty of his creations, Rajo's lasting legacy is paving the way for a new generation of artisans and creatives by establishing a strong Filipino brand that translates beyond fashion. And that is truly something to celebrate.
Actually, we've had a lot of people say, you know, I'm not funny. I can't do that because I'm really not funny. Those are the ones who excel at the class because improv isn't about being funny. Improv, you actually rely on whoever's on stage with you. It's a very creative process. It's very collaborative also.